15 years. That's how long it took for me to be anything more than a family footnote. I still remember the texture of the envelope when it arrived, a glossy cardstock invitation to the annual Walker family reunion. Gold lettering, as always. Clara's signature touch. My mother believed in appearances, in curating moments that looked good in photo albums. I used to think I'd feel something when I got that envelope again. Instead, I left it unopened on the corner of my kitchen counter, right next to a mug of black coffee and the morning sun cutting clean through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my Austin penthouse. Everything about my life now was designed for silence. Minimalist architecture, thick glass walls, automated systems that didn't require me to talk to anyone unless I wanted to. But that morning, I couldn't avoid it. The headline was already out. Forbes, the quiet disruptor. Ethan Walker's $10 billion immersive empire. My photo, standing beneath an archway of interactive neon light sculptures, stared back at me from the homepage. I hadn't expected it to go viral that fast. Maxine, my assistant, buzzed through the intercom. Ethan? It's Noah. Again. Of course it was. I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck, then hit the button to answer. Hey Noah. Dude, what the hell? He barked. I just got off a call with Bloomberg. They wanted a quote from the golden brother of a tech billionaire. Billionaire Ethan? I let the silence hang between us for a second. Guess you'll find out with everyone else. No. Cut the crap. You let us think you were broke. For years. You let Mom host those passive-aggressive dinners. Dad said you were still trying to find yourself for over a decade. I didn't let you believe anything, I said, my voice calm. You believed what made you comfortable. Noah went quiet. Remember when I moved into that rundown garage studio in East Austin? I continued. Yeah, when you quit finance to mess with that. What was it? 3D design stuff. That was the beginning. I walked to the balcony and watched one of my electric SUVs pull into the driveway below, sensors gliding it into place with elegant precision. Back then, I'd sold my first interactive sculpture collection for $660,000. No one knew. 6 months later, I sold another batch for $200,000. By the time Mom was scolding me for not applying to jobs on Christmas Eve, I had quietly passed the $1 million mark. Noah was still doing math in his head. But the Civic, the beat-up car, the borrowed rent. I never borrowed rent, I said. I asked Mom and Dad to invest in my company. They said no, and the Civic was deliberate. Same with the apartment. People underestimate what they don't understand, and I needed you all to underestimate me. Silence again. Finally, Noah exhaled. How rich are you? I chuckled. The article says $10 billion, but that's Forbes being conservative. I glanced back at the invitation on the counter. Clara had written in sharp cursive, family is everything. Maybe it was, just not the way she meant. I've got a meeting, I said. See you at the reunion. Before he could respond, I ended the call. 15 years ago, I sat across from my parents at their riverfront estate just outside of Dallas. The table was set like a magazine spread ivory linen napkins, gold cutlery, wine glasses polished to mirror finish. Clara had a talent for making everything seem perfect, even if you were dying inside. Jonathan, my father, was slicing through a rare steak like it had personally offended him. Noah was talking about how he'd been fast-tracked for promotion at the firm. Rebecca was already 2 glasses in, waxing poetic about Manhattan brunch culture like she was narrating a Netflix special. Me? I was the silent one at the end of the table. The disappointment. So, Clara said, placing her fork down delicately. What's this I hear about you? Playing with virtual art now. I nodded. I've been developing immersive environments. Interactive VR sculpture. It's early stage, but Jonathan snorted. Not laughed. Snorted. Like what I said was beneath comment. Ethan, he said, shaking his head. You graduated from Wharton. You could walk into any financial firm in New York tomorrow. Instead, you're making video games? It's not a game. No, it's a fantasy, Clara added, with that half smile she used when pretending not to be cruel. Honey, you need something more stable, something serious. I could have told them then that I'd just sold a collection of digital sculptures for $50. Oh, that I had 3 virtual galleries reaching out to feature my work, that a venture firm from Palo Alto had emailed me twice that week. Instead, I said, I'll figure it out. Jonathan's knife paused mid-cut. You mean you're turning down the offer to join the firm? Yes. No more support, he said, almost robotically. You're on your own. Clara reached out like she was about to console a child who didn't understand the rules. We're not abandoning you. We're teaching you to grow up. Noah just watched, Rebecca smirked. That night, I packed a duffel bag and drove back to Austin. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just left. The first year was brutal. I lived in a converted garage, slept on a futon, $8 ramen for weeks at a time. I coded all night, designed during the day, and pitched my work to anyone who would look at it. Most didn't. But then my first collection, Neon Syntax, sold out in 6 hours. Earnings, $1.2 million. I hired a small team, built a platform, partnered with digital auction houses. Every dollar went back in. I skipped vacations, ignored birthdays, and turned down dates. This was war, a silent one. By the end of year 1, my net worth hit $10 million. Year 3, $100 million. I went home for Thanksgiving that year. Same Civic, same faded jeans, same quiet smile. Jonathan asked me if I was still freelancing. Clara offered to send me job listings. I said, I'm doing just fine. And I was. But they never asked more, never Googled me, never wondered why I hadn't borrowed money since college. They didn't see it because they didn't want to. Now, years later, standing in my penthouse above the lights of Austin, I was watching the world finally catch up. The reunion was in 3 days. And this time I wasn't going to sit at the end of the table. I never intended to make a spectacle of it. That wasn't my style. But when you've spent over a decade being the ghost in your own family, silently building, quietly succeeding, there comes a point where you stop making yourself small just to fit their view of you. That point came when Forbes published the feature. Within minutes of the article dropping, my phone turned into a war zone. Texts, missed calls, emails. Rebecca, are you serious right now? Ethan? Forbes? This is you? Clara, Ethan, please call me. We're confused. Is this a mistake? Jonathan, we need to speak before the reunion. Some things aren't meant to be shared with strangers. Noah didn't even bother pretending. His voicemail sounded like panic wrapped in entitlement. Dude, we're literally trending. It's not cool to spring this on us like this. You owe us some kind of explanation. Noah loved the idea of being the family's success story, but now he was no longer the headline. I was. I muted them all. Then I turned to Maxine. Is everything ready? She nodded, tablet in hand. The chartered jets scheduled. Ground transport arranged. Your family will be picked up individually, Rolls-Royce fleet, just as you asked. NDA packages signed. And the location? Belize. The eco-resort's prepped. We branded the main wing as Walker Immersive South. Custom signage is being installed today. I leaned back in my chair. The light outside was golden. Austin's sun always had this cinematic quality in the early evening. Like even the city was in on the plot. I picked up the family reunion invitation from the counter. The same gold script I'd left unopened. I'd changed nothing about it. Same event. Same guest list, same date, but the location? That had been updated. Instead of Clara and Jonathan's riverfront estate in Dallas, our family reunion would now take place on a 300-acre private eco-island off the coast of Belize, an island I quietly purchased last year after closing a licensing deal with a global tech company. They didn't know yet. That reveal would come in layers. Every piece of this reunion had been designed to do what words never could: show, not tell. Each guest suite on the island had been tailored with its own welcome packet. Maxine had worked overtime with my team to prepare the materials. For Clara, a printed copy of the investor pitch deck she once called juvenile. I'd marked in red what a $500,000 investment back then would be worth now: $94 million. For Jonathan, a timeline of every single company collaboration he declined from me, alongside the current market value of those opportunities. Total missed return, $287 million. For Rebecca, a side-by-side breakdown of her annual salary and how much I earned per week in interest alone. I titled the page, Perspective. For Noah, an internal audit of how much business his firm lost after publicly mocking my tech platform. His name was on every single rejection email. I had Maxine prep a short welcome video to play during dinner, synced across all screens in the grand dining hall. It would start with early family footage graduations, birthdays before fading into a black screen with the words, "While you were watching someone else," followed by a dramatic reveal of my journey, milestones, and valuation growth. Dramatic? Yes, but honest. And to answer my father's text, yes, some things are best discussed privately, but not when you ignored every private moment I tried to speak. The next morning, Maxine gave me a status update. All family members confirmed. Everyone's agreed to the itinerary and ground transport. Your mother asked if they should dress for Texas weather. I laughed. Tell her to bring a swimsuit. We were 3 days out. The morning of the departure, I stood on the private runway outside of Austin. The jet, custom white, chrome-lined, gleamed in the morning light. Walker Immersive was emblazoned across the fuselage in matte gunmetal letters. First to arrive was Jonathan, always punctual, still stiff in the shoulders, still wearing power suits like armor. He stepped out of the car and paused when he saw the jet. Clara followed, hair pristine, expression unreadable, but her eyes flicked between me and the jet, calculating, scrambling for context. Then Rebecca, then Noah, then cousins and uncles and relatives who hadn't texted me in years, but suddenly felt warm and fuzzy, now that their bloodline included a billionaire. I greeted them with the same smile they'd seen before, polite, controlled. But this time, I held the cards. "Welcome," I said. "Hope the ride was comfortable." Jonathan looked around, his voice tight. "This is elaborate. The resort would have been fine." I nodded. "It would have, but this year's different. This year, I wanted to host." Noah stepped closer, brow furrowed. "You're serious about all this? You bought a jet?" "No," I said. "I bought a fleet." The moment their feet hit the jet's marble floor, and their eyes met the gold-veined inlays and brushed aluminum finishes, the silence said everything. Rebecca spotted the original Rothko above the bar and gasped. "That's not real, is it?" "It is." Clara didn't speak for the rest of the flight. 2 hours later, we descended over turquoise waters. My island came into view, dense green landscape wrapped by pristine beaches, and in the center, a modern compound framed by palm trees and drone pads. But what really caught their attention was the helipad. My name, Ethan Walker, spelled in bold stone letters visible from the sky, was etched into the clearing. Rebecca whispered, "You branded the island?" I smiled. "It's not branding, it's ownership." We landed. As they disembarked, I watched every step they took. Claire's heels clicked on the tarmac, a beat slower than usual. Jonathan adjusted his cufflinks too often. Noah looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Rebecca couldn't stop staring. I turned to Maxine, who was already organizing the welcome drinks. "Start distributing the packets," I said. "Let the truth sink in before dinner." She nodded and moved with silent efficiency. Inside, the resort was ready. Modern architecture melted into natural surroundings. Glass walls opened to an infinity pool that overlooked the sea. Every room bore a custom quote, each one something they'd said to me over the years. Clara's suite. Maybe one day you'll understand stability. Jonathan's room. You're wasting your potential. Rebecca's villa. Not everyone gets to chase dreams. All backlit. All impossible to ignore. I went back to my own quarters penthouse style, overlooking the coast, and opened the group chat. Typed one line, dinner at 7. Dress like you're not the only success in the room. Then I put my phone down, poured a scotch, and watched the waves roll in. It was just the beginning. At 6:55 p.m., I stepped into the dining hall. The architecture was open, and seamless glass walls folding into the ocean breeze, warm light spilling across a polished stone table that ran nearly the length of the room. Each place setting glimmered with silver, and beside every plate was a leather-bound folder. Maxine had outdone herself. I stood at the head of the table, watching the Walker family arrive, one by one. They were quieter than usual. Clara clutched her shawl too tightly. Jonathan's confident gait had stiffened. Rebecca's designer heels clicked like warning bells on the tile, but her eyes were alert, scanning. Noah. Well, he looked like he was still hoping someone would tell him this was all a prank. "Good evening," I said simply as they settled in. Clara finally broke the silence. "Ethan, this is all very impressive, but we're still trying to understand. Why the secrecy?" Jonathan jumped in before I could answer. "This isn't how family works. You don't ambush your own parents with a press release." I paused, then took a sip of wine. "You're right," I said calmly. "Family listens. Family sees each other. Family shows up. I tried all of that. For years. I looked down the table at Rebecca, then at Noah. But when you only see someone as a failure, it doesn't matter how loud they speak." Jonathan leaned back, folding his arms. "You could have told us what you were building." "I did," I said, not raising my voice. "You called it a phase. You laughed. You said no one pays for pixels." Clara flinched. I let the words hang in the air. "Go ahead and open the folders." They hesitated, then slowly complied. Pages rustled. Breath caught. The only sound was the gentle crash of waves outside. Clara's hands trembled as she read her page. Proposed investment, $500,000. Projected return 2024, $94.2 million. "I brought you this pitch 3 times, I said. You said it wasn't serious enough for the Walker name." Jonathan's folder was thicker. He flipped through page after page of lost partnerships, declined proposals, cold email replies from his own firm. "You told me to get Errol's job." "Your exact words." Rebecca blinked fast. Her comparison chart was simple, yet brutal. Her net salary over the last 5 years? A fraction of what I earn monthly from passive licensing deals. She closed the folder with a soft snap and stared at the tablecloth. Noah's folder was the last to be opened. I watched his jaw tighten as he read through the internal memo from his company, the one that called my project too unstable for a partnership. Maxine had even highlighted the part where his name appeared on the rejection. "This isn't revenge," I said quietly. "It's context." Behind me, a set of screens descended from the ceiling with a soft mechanical hum. The air shifted, then the lights dimmed, and the show began. Photos faded in, snapshots from childhood birthday parties, school recitals, family trips. In every photo, I was present, but somehow always on the edges, cropped, forgotten. Background noise. Then the narrative changed. 2010, Ethan pitches his first digital installation. Response: find a real gallery. Result: sells for $50,000. 2013, applies for investment. Response: no market for VR art. Result: platform reaches $15 million valuation. 2016, Noah's firm turns down proposal. Result: Deal signed with competitor for $120 million. One by one, the family's words dismissive, patronizing, cruel appeared on screen beside the milestones they'd tried to erase. The contrast was surgical. Rebecca spoke first. Her voice was soft. "We didn't know, Ethan." I turned toward her. "You didn't want to." Claire's eyes were wide, but not in shock. In shame. "I offered you all seats at the table," I continued. "You pushed me into the hallway and told me to earn one the hard way." Jonathan looked like he wanted to speak. I stopped him with a glance. Not yet. The screens faded. The lights rose. And I reached beneath the table, pulling out one final folder, a large one marked The Island. I handed it to Clara. Inside were the full deeds, registration, and environmental partnership documents for the island they were currently standing on. Stamped, certified, owned. "You said I was chasing a fantasy," I said. "This is that fantasy, and you're standing in the middle of it." She didn't look up. Jonathan finally found his voice. "So, what do you want, Ethan? An apology?" I shook my head. "No. I don't want anything. This isn't about validation." I stood, placing both hands flat on the table. "This is about truth. And for once, I wanted you to see it without me needing to fight for the mic. I didn't build this to prove anything to you. I built it because I believed in it, even when no one else did." The silence that followed was the kind that doesn't just fill a room. It weighs it down. After dinner, I walked alone along the torch-lit path to the eastern cliffside. The sea wind pressed against my shirt like a second skin. Maxine found me there 20 minutes later. "They're quiet," she said. "Not angry. Just processing." I nodded. "They'll need time." "You did it, you know," she said. "You made them see." I let out a slow breath. "Yeah, but that wasn't the goal." "Then what was?" I stared out over the water. Freedom. The morning after the dinner, the island was different. Not in appearance. The ocean still hummed against the shoreline. The glass villa walls still shimmered under the Belize sun, but in atmosphere. The energy had shifted. There was a strange quietness to it all. Like everyone had exhaled at once and didn't know what came next. I sat at the outdoor terrace of the main pavilion, coffee in hand, watching the sea. The same family that used to treat me like an afterthought was now just a few villas away, sipping fresh juice from crystal glasses, tiptoeing across imported stone floors they never thought I could afford, let alone design. I hadn't seen them yet, not since dinner, but that was fine. I didn't need a standing ovation. I wasn't interested in gratitude or validation. I just needed them to finally see me. And they had. Mid-morning, Maxine appeared, holding a sealed envelope. "From your father," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "He used paper?" She smirked. "Typed, but he signed it by hand." I took the envelope, weighed it in my palm for a moment, then opened it. It was short, measured, but unmistakably him. "Ethan, I was wrong. Not just about your work, but about you. I confused silence with failure. I assumed quiet meant lost. You didn't just build a business. You built something I don't even have words for. I didn't see it. I didn't see you. That's on me." "Jonathan," I folded the letter neatly and slid it into the inside pocket of my linen blazer. Later that day, I framed it next to a printout of my first ever online sale, $50. For a glitch-inspired VR sculpture titled Signal Lost. It was the first time someone had seen potential in me, and they weren't even family. Around noon, I made my way to the main beach where the family had gathered for brunch. Rebecca was talking softly with no one near the shore. Clara sat beneath a white parasol, sunglasses hiding most of her expression. Jonathan stood a few feet back, hands in his pockets, his shirt untucked, a rare sign of vulnerability from a man who always looked like a bank commercial. I walked up casually. They turned, almost in unison. "Good morning," I said. Clara stood slowly, brushing sand from her dress. "Ethan." I don't have the words. You don't have to, I replied. A long silence stretched between us. The wind carried the smell of sea salt and ripe mango. I should have come to your exhibits, she said at last. I should have. Tried harder. I nodded once. Maybe. But I stopped needing that a while ago. She looked down. For the first time in a long time, Clara Walker didn't seem in control. She just looked small, human. Your platform, Walker, immersive. It's unlike anything we've seen, said Noah. One of our clients brought it up in a meeting last week. We didn't even connect it to you, because no one ever thought to. Jonathan stepped forward. We'd like to invest, if you're open to it. I smiled politely. I'm not seeking investors, Rebecca laughed, not out of amusement, but some hybrid of shock and respect. Of course you're not. I do have something for you all, though, I added. Maxine appeared again, as if on cue, and handed each of them a slim, sealed envelope. What's this? Clara asked. An invitation, I said, to a new program I'm launching, Legacy Rewritten. It's an incubator for underrepresented digital artists, young people like I was, unsupported, unseen. They'll get funding, mentorship, a stage. Jonathan furrowed his brow. So, this isn't for us? No, I said with a smile. This one's for the people who actually believed in me before it was easy to do so. They opened the envelopes. Inside was a single card. You're welcome to attend. But this time, the seats at the table are already filled. Ethan, that evening, the sun dipped low over the ocean, turning the water a copper gold. The final dinner was lighter, less formal. Laughter returned, though cautiously. No one dared to brag. Not this time. We toasted to the future. They talked about their plans. And for once, they asked about mine, not out of pity, not from obligation, out of curiosity. The next morning, the Rolls Royces lined up at the tarmac again. The same jet stood ready for departure. One by one, they boarded, each of them quiet in their own way. Jonathan paused before stepping into the plane. You know, he said, glancing at the helipad bearing my name, I think I underestimated what silence can build. You all did, I said. He nodded, but not anymore. Clara placed a hand on my shoulder as she passed. That was her version of an apology. Rebecca gave me a long look before boarding. Then finally Noah, dragging his suitcase a little slower than usual, turned back. Ethan, yeah? He smiled weakly. You win. I shook my head. I didn't win, Noah. I just stopped losing. When the jet lifted into the sky, I didn't wave. I stood on the edge of the tarmac until the sound faded completely. Then I turned and walked back to the villa, barefoot. That afternoon, I went to the media room and flicked on the wall of screens. Notifications rolled in like waves. Feature interview request from TechCrunch. TED Talk invite from Stanford. A private message from an artist in Lagos who said my story made him believe again. And then one headline, center screen, Walker Immersive unveils groundbreaking art platform for emerging creators. Valuation surges, another $1.3 billion. I leaned back in the chair and let the silence stretch. No family photos on the desk, no trophies on the shelves. Just a framed quote beside me. Sometimes the quiet one isn't lost. He's just building something you can't imagine. Story 2. I hadn't heard from my half-sister, Danny, in almost 2 decades. And then, out of nowhere, she was on my porch with a suitcase and a sob story. Let me backtrack. I'm Mia. I'm 25, live alone in a house next door to my dad's. And up until last week, I had exactly 0 contact with my mom's side of the family. That includes Danny. She and I aren't close. Hell, we were never close. We're technically 9 months apart. Yeah, that kind of awkward timeline. My dad stayed married to my mom until I was 5, but when I told him about the friend she kept bringing around when he wasn't home, everything blew up. Turns out Danny's dad was that friend. My dad walked away. left the house to my mom in exchange for her removing his name from Danny's birth certificate. He still paid child support for me, though, until I turned 8, which was around the time my mom decided she didn't want me anymore. Her new partner didn't want to bring someone else's kid to his family Christmas, so she just left me. Midweek, Dad got full custody after that, and the door to that side of the family shut and never reopened. Danny and I barely crossed paths after that. She said she didn't have a sister, so I stopped pretending I had one. Fast forward to last week. I get a call from an unknown number. I don't answer. Then a text. "Hey, it's Danny. I really need your help." I stared at my phone for a solid 5 minutes before locking it again. Help with what? A few minutes later, another call. This time I pick up. She's sobbing. Says our mom kicked her out. That her stepdad doesn't want her in the house. That she has nowhere else to go. She's 6 hours away. Can I come get her? Let her stay with me? I hung up. Not my finest moment. But I had no idea how she got my number. And suddenly, I'm her last hope? After 17 years, she starts texting nonstop. "Please, Mia. I don't have anyone. You're my sister. I need you. I'm pregnant. I swear I'll get back on my feet." I didn't reply at first. Then she called again, and I finally answered. "We're not sisters," I said. "I'm not coming to get you, and I'm not giving you a place to stay." I hung up, blocked her number. That should have been the end, but it wasn't, because she started calling from other numbers. Then came the messages from my mom's side. Aunts, cousins, people I haven't heard from since I was a kid. Suddenly I'm heartless and cold, and just like our mother. That one stung. My grandmother, the only person from that side I even occasionally spoke to, and only on holidays, called me, crying. Said Danny had nowhere to go. That family helps family. That I, of all people, should understand, because I was kicked out once too. I told her, it's not the same. Apparently she didn't want to hear that. She gave Danny my address, my phone number, told her I had my own place and no responsibilities, that I'd do the right thing. And that's how I ended up sitting in my car after work, staring at my half-sister on my porch with a suitcase, crying. I didn't even get out of the car, just stared. My chest felt like it was on fire. This girl, no, this stranger, had driven 6 hours with someone, probably my grandmother, and was ready to just move in. I called my dad, told him what was happening. He said, "Stay in the car. Call the cops." So I did. When the officers arrived, Danny ran up to them saying I had agreed to let her stay, that she was homeless, that I was leaving her stranded. I showed them the texts, the blocked numbers, the refusal after refusal. I didn't even know what she looked like until that moment. "This woman is not my sister," I told them. "We share DNA, nothing else." Eventually, they took her off my property. I sat on my dad's couch that night, shaking with rage. He made me tea, told me I did the right thing. That letting her in, especially after all those years, especially under these circumstances, would have been dangerous. I wanted to believe him, but the guilt was already creeping in. Not because I thought she deserved my help, but because I couldn't believe it had come to this. The next morning, I reviewed the security footage. Danny and my grandmother had been snooping around my place before I even got home. They checked under my doormat, lifted up flower pots, opened the mailbox, tried the doors, looking for a spare key, probably. I don't keep one outside, never have. Only my dad, grandpa, and uncle have keys. And now I'm glad I never got careless with that. My uncle, who's kind of our unofficial tech guy, came over that day and helped me upgrade all my cameras. We added motion alerts, tighter angles, even installed video doorbells on both the front and back doors. Everything now syncs to my phone. Meanwhile, the first went to the police station with my grandfather to file for a temporary restraining order. Danny didn't have a record, so they couldn't hold her for long. But her showing up after I said no repeatedly, that helped. I gave them the footage, the texts, the call logs. It was enough to get the temporary order approved. My grandmother picked Danny up from the station. Then they both doubled down. More texts, more voicemails, threats, guilt trips, manipulations. "You're selfish," one said. "Your dad raised you to be cold." Another, "She's your blood, and she's pregnant. Do you even care?" The worst part? Some messages weren't even directly from them. Relatives I hadn't spoken to since childhood suddenly knew everything. Apparently, they'd been told I promised Danny a place to stay, a flat-out lie. One of my cousins even said this whole thing was my turn to step up, that they had tried to help but Danny had nowhere else to go. So I asked, why me? Why the sister she never claimed? Why the one who got dropped like trash by the very same mom who raised her? No one had a real answer. That night, I was alone again, sitting on my couch. Lights off, just me and the hum of the refrigerator. I stared at the ceiling and thought about how surreal this all was. It had been 17 years. 17 years of silence, of being erased, of only existing when it was convenient. And now I was expected to be the savior. I talked with my dad the next morning. He reminded me of something important. This isn't about helping someone in need. It's about someone trying to force their way into your life without earning a place in it. He wasn't wrong. Because when you strip away all the drama, all the crying, all the guilt trips, Danny never once apologized, never acknowledged the years, never said, "Hey, I know we're strangers, but can we start fresh?" No, she came demanding, assuming, entitled. And that's why I felt no shame pressing forward with the restraining order. But I wasn't ready for what came next. Later that week, I got a tip from someone unexpected, a cousin from my grandmother's side. She DM'd me a long message, apologizing in advance, saying she thought I should know the real reason Danny got kicked out. Apparently, Danny was sleeping with her mom's new husband. Yeah, her mom's husband. And the kicker? One of his sons had just turned 18. According to this cousin, Danny was caught. Her things were tossed out, locks changed. No police, just a brutal, messy, "you're done here" kind of exit. She tried to smooth it over by saying it only happened once, on the son's birthday. But her mom didn't buy it. Now, the family was scrambling to clean it up, and they thought I was the easiest solution. A clean house, no kids, a full-time job, a private driveway, perfect landing pad. Except I wasn't. The cousin warned me, do not let her in. Not even for a minute. Not even to drop her at a shelter. Because once she's in, she'll spin a web you can't cut loose from. I felt sick reading it. And then I felt angry. Because it confirmed what I already knew deep down. This wasn't about sisterhood. It wasn't about family. It was about control, about manipulation, about trying to solve a mess by dumping it on someone else. I blocked the cousin after thanking her. I didn't need any more details, but I screenshotted everything, just in case. That weekend, I talked to a lawyer. She said I was doing all the right things, documenting, upgrading security, calling the police, collecting evidence. We talked about what a permanent restraining order would require. She told me to be ready in case Danny tried anything else. It's 7 days in my state for someone to claim tenancy if they're allowed to stay. 7 days. That's all it would take. That night, I moved a few things around in the house. Cleared space near the doors, checked every window lock, parked in the garage. I even told my neighbors what was going on, just in case someone unfamiliar came around asking for me. This wasn't paranoia. This was preparation, because Danny wasn't done, not even close. The day I got the knock on my door again, I didn't even flinch. This time, I was ready. I didn't answer, just looked at my phone, checked the front camera feed. Danny, same suitcase, same tired cry for help expression. This time, she wasn't alone. My grandmother was with her. I didn't even give them the grace of surprise. I already had 911 pre-dialed, and they didn't just knock, they pleaded. My grandmother shouted my name like we were still on speaking terms. Danny kept repeating that she just needed a place for the night. I hit the silent alarm, Within 10 minutes, the police were at my door. And that was it. They were both arrested. Grandmother for violating the restraining order. Danny for trespassing again. The next day, I got confirmation. They'd both been booked and processed. I felt quiet. Not relieved, not angry. Just still. It's strange. When you grow up being ignored by one side of your family, it carves something out of you, like a hollow that you learn to live around. Then suddenly, those same people barge back in, trying to fill it, not with love, not with remorse, but with chaos. It wasn't about healing. It was about control. I spent that weekend with people who do show up for me. My aunt brought groceries and hugged me like she meant it. My best friend crashed on the couch. We drank tea, watched trash TV, talked about everything except family. Peace felt like a muscle I hadn't used in a while. But the fallout didn't end with an arrest. A few days later, another cousin reached out. One I vaguely remembered from childhood. We used to build forts with couch cushions at Grandma's, back when things were still innocent. She told me Danny had stolen her car and credit cards. Tried to run off with some baby items too. That fake pregnancy? Turns out it was just that, fake. Apparently, Danny had told Grandma she was pregnant to get help. Showed a test. Never followed up. Then in jail, when they asked her to confirm it, she refused. The cousin said it best. She's been lying to everyone for years. You just happened to be her last shot. Honestly, I didn't feel vindicated. Just sad. Not for Danny, for the kid I used to be, hoping maybe one day someone on that side would call and say, "We're sorry for what happened to you." But no one ever did. Instead, they tried to use me. Tried to gaslight me into thinking my boundaries were selfish. That sharing a bloodline meant I owed her shelter, safety, trust, things she never once earned. The truth? I don't hate Danny. I don't have space in me for that kind of fire anymore. But I resent what she tried to do, forcing herself into my home, my peace, under the excuse of family. I resent that she waited 17 years to acknowledge me, only when she had nowhere else to go. I've spent most of my adult life rebuilding. Therapy, boundaries, owning a home I worked hard for, choosing the people in my life, learning that family isn't about DNA. It's about who shows up, who respects your no, who doesn't try to steal your peace just because they can't find their own. And here's the twist that most of them didn't expect. I wasn't the scared, abandoned 8-year-old anymore. I was the adult who could say no and mean it. The restraining order became permanent. I've added legal signage to my property now. Cameras are discreet but active. My neighbors know the drill, and I've changed my number. Shared the new one only with people who deserve access. Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'll be hosting now. My real grandma, the one who raised me like a daughter, suggested it. So we canceled our usual trip and decided to bring the holidays home, where we feel safe. No more worrying about someone showing up to claim family rights. The story doesn't end with a dramatic explosion. No court trial, no TV-worthy confrontation, just a door staying closed, and a woman sitting in her house, surrounded by the people who chose her, not out of blood, but out of love. That's the closure I needed. So if you're ever in a similar spot, wondering if you're wrong for saying no, for protecting your space, for refusing to set yourself on fire to keep others warm, let me say this, you're not wrong. You're allowed to choose peace over people who bring storms, even if they call themselves family. Especially then. Story 3. I'm 28 now, but this story really began when I was 21. That's when I met Mila. We were both undergrads at the time, introduced through mutual friends at a campus event. She was funny, sharp, and had this way of putting people at ease with just a look. I didn't stand a chance. We started dating about a year later, and for 6 solid years, she became my person. Not just my girlfriend, my partner and everything. Mila came from a different cultural background than mine. My parents, both immigrants, tend to stick to our community. They're cautious, traditional, and honestly, They can be a little closed off with outsiders. But even they warmed up to Mila pretty quickly, especially my mom, which says a lot. Mila has that effect on people. My sister adored her. Even my cousins treated her like she was already family. And then there was my older brother, Daniel. Daniel is 2 years older than me. When we were kids, I worshipped him. He was fearless, the kind of guy who stood up to bullies on behalf of other kids. Protective, confident, and charming. He was the kind of older brother you'd want to have. He was the first person I introduced Mila to after things got serious. They got along instantly. He made her laugh. She made him smile. It was good. For a while, it was all good. Mila fit into my family like she'd been born into it. She'd shop with my mom and sister, play pool with my cousins, and show up to every family gathering without skipping a beat. She even managed to get my grumpy uncle to smile once. That's a rare skill. Then came that night. It was just another house party at my parents' place. The usual scene: loud music, too much alcohol, too many people packed into too small a space. Mila and I both got tipsy. Hell, I ended up falling asleep on the floor in the living room. The next morning she was quiet, off. I figured she was just hungover, but something wasn't right. Eventually she looked at me and said, "I think Daniel tried to kiss me." It was like getting punched in the gut. The fog from the night before vanished. I asked her to tell me everything, and she did. Apparently, a bunch of folks had gone up to the roof toward the end of the night, one of those get some fresh air kind of things. Eventually, everyone trickled back down, and it was just her and Daniel. She said they were talking, and out of nowhere, he leaned in to kiss her. She pulled back immediately, made an excuse, and left. That was it, or so I thought. I confronted Daniel later. He admitted to it, said he was drunk and wasn't thinking straight. Apologized. At the time, I thought it was just a drunken mistake. Awkward but survivable. I told Mila, and we agreed not to make a big deal out of it. We didn't want to fracture the family over something he seemed genuinely ashamed about. Mila said she was uncomfortable, but willing to try to move on as long as Daniel kept his distance. But after that, the dynamic changed. Daniel and I barely spoke. When we did, it was clipped, formal like two strangers at a dinner party who had nothing in common. Mila stopped going to family events for a while. I didn't blame her. About 6 months later, we got invited to another big family get-together. Mila was hesitant, but decided to go. We thought it might be a turning point. We were so wrong. It was late into the night when I realized I hadn't seen Mila for a bit. I assumed she was with my sister or helping my mom clean up, but something nagged at me, call it instinct. I started checking around the house. When I got to the second floor, I heard something. Muffled noises. A scuffle. I opened the door to one of the spare bedrooms and froze. Daniel had Mila pinned on the bed. He was covering her mouth with one hand and trying to pull up her dress with the other. She was fighting back, kicking, twisting, trying to scream through his grip. I blacked out. The next few seconds are a blur. All I remember is tackling him and throwing punches. I didn't stop until my dad and two uncles pulled me off him. Blood everywhere his face, my knuckles, the wall. I think I might have cracked his nose. Mila ran downstairs in tears. My dad asked what happened, and when I told him, he sat on the floor and just broke. Quiet. Staring at nothing for a good 10 minutes. Daniel went to the hospital. I took Mila home. She cried the entire way. Didn't sleep for days. She kept saying she couldn't shake the feeling that she was in danger, that he could come back, that no one would believe her. And honestly, I was scared too. I was scared for her, and I was angrier than I'd ever been in my life. Not just at Daniel, but at myself, for not seeing it sooner, for bringing her into a family where that could happen. I made a decision right then. No more sweeping things under the rug. We didn't file charges. A lawyer friend advised me that if I pressed charges, Daniel could try to charge me too for the beating. And Mila wasn't in the right state to testify. So we settled for a restraining order. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And then we tried to heal. The days after that night were brutal. Mila barely spoke. She'd sleep for a few hours, wake up crying, then sit in silence for the rest of the day. I stopped going to work, stopped answering texts. I didn't care about anything else except making sure she was okay. But she wasn't, not even close. She tried going back to work after a couple weeks. That lasted all of 4 hours. She came home shaking, convinced someone was following her. She couldn't be in crowded spaces, couldn't even take the trash out without panicking. I didn't know what to do. I felt completely useless, and guilty like this was all somehow my fault for letting Daniel near her in the first place. Eventually, we talked about therapy. At first, she said no. Said she didn't want to sit in a room with a stranger and talk about something so personal. But I had told her I'd go with her. Just sit outside if that helped. That got through. She started therapy a few days later, and after about a month, her therapist asked if I'd come in for a session too. I thought it was just to support Mila, but turns out I needed it as much as she did. I walked in thinking I was fine. I walked out realizing I'd been carrying around a hell of a lot of rage, guilt, and shame. I blamed myself for not protecting her. I blamed myself for thinking Daniel was ever someone worth looking up to. I'd been raised to believe that family was everything, that blood ties came first. But now, all I could think about was how that same family produced the man who hurt the woman I love. We kept going to therapy, separately and together. Slowly, we started to breathe again. Eat regular meals, go for walks, talk about the future without that cloud hanging over us every second of the day. We even signed up for self-defense classes together. Mila was hesitant at first, but eventually it became something she looked forward to. She told me once, "It's the first time I feel like I have some power back." That meant everything to me. A few months ago, I proposed. I got down on one knee in our living room, just the two of us, and asked her to build a life with me. She said yes before I even finished the question. It should have been one of the happiest moments of our lives. Instead, that's when my family started crawling back into the picture. When I called my parents to share the news, my dad said congratulations, and my mom paused. She smiled, but I could tell something was off. Later that evening, she called me alone. She said she was happy for us, but there was something she wanted to talk to me about. I should have known. She told me she had been in contact with Daniel, that he'd reached out during the pandemic, asking if they were okay, that he'd changed, that he was sorry. I didn't say anything, just listened. Then she said, "I think it's time you forgive him." I stood up, grabbed my keys, and left. When I got home, I told Mila everything. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just sat on the couch, looked out the window, and said, "I knew this would happen eventually." The next few days, I started hearing it from other relatives. A cousin asked if I'd talked to Daniel. An uncle mentioned that 4 years is a long time to hold a grudge. It was like they all had collective amnesia. They weren't there when I found Mila on that bed. They didn't see the fear in her eyes. They didn't hold her night after night while she shook in her sleep. And yet, somehow, they were the ones telling me to move on. I ignored them. Blocked a few numbers. Thought that would be enough. It wasn't. 4 days later, my mom called again. She told me she had shared our engagement news with Daniel, that he was coming into town next week, that he wanted to talk. I lost it. I told her she had no right, that we had a restraining order for a reason, that if he so much as showed up near our place, I'd make sure the police knew every detail. I hung up before she could respond. Then the texts started coming in again. My dad, 2 aunts, even a family friend I hadn't spoken to in years. They all said the same thing in different words. "He's your brother. Don't let this tear the family apart." But that's the thing. He already did. He tore it apart the second he put his hands on my fiancée. And now they expected me to just pretend it didn't happen? Like we could just go back to barbecues and birthdays? I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just told my sister. She was the only one who never once asked me to forgive him. She was the one person who stood by Mila from the very start. The two of them had grown close over the years, and after the assault, My sister basically became Mila's second shadow. She was just as angry as we were. That's when she said something that stuck with me. If he did this to Mila in a house full of people, what do you think he was capable of when no one was watching? It stopped me cold. I hadn't considered that before. Not really. Not deeply. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The way Daniel had always acted so charming in public. The way he could flip a switch and be the nicest guy in the room. The way no one ever suspected him of anything. So we started asking around. Quietly. Carefully. Family members, old friends, coworkers, anyone who'd ever crossed paths with him. And the things we heard. People said he was always a little too friendly with women. That he made inappropriate jokes. That he'd accidentally brush against people a little too often. One friend remembered a party where Daniel left with a very drunk coworker, and she couldn't remember a thing the next morning. It wasn't just Mila. It was a pattern. A terrifying, sickening pattern. One of the most haunting conversations came from the sister of one of Daniel's exes. She said her sister used to go completely quiet whenever he was around. That she'd brush off concerns, make excuses. But she always looked like she was trying not to flinch. That was it. That was the final push. We decided we weren't just going to protect ourselves anymore. We were going to protect others too. Mila, my sister, and I began gathering everything we could: stories, testimonies, dates, messages. We weren't going to let this be just another secret swept under the rug. Because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making sure no one else had to go through what we did. Once we had enough to move forward, everything changed. We weren't just reacting anymore, we were planning. We weren't fueled by rage. Not anymore. This time it was focus. It was intention. It was about doing what was right. Not just for us, but for anyone else Daniel had hurt or might hurt in the future. Mila was the one who said it first. He won't stop unless someone stops him. She was right. So we met with a lawyer, explained everything, showed her the testimonies, the names, the places. It was more than enough to open a case. 8 women, 8 stories that lined up far too well to be coincidence. And those were just the ones willing to speak. Our lawyer advised us to keep quiet for now. No posting, no warnings, no telling our parents. No matter how badly I wanted to shove the truth in their faces. She said, if we went public too early, it could backfire. Daniel could claim defamation, stall the case, or even run. So we waited. It was the hardest part. I stopped talking to my parents completely. Cut them off like a gangrenous limb. It wasn't easy, but I didn't trust them not to tip Daniel off. Especially not after what my mom had already done. Funny thing is, they didn't notice. Not until it was too late. My sister played double agent during all of this. She kept close to my parents, acted like she was neutral, but behind the scenes, she was helping us dig. She learned that Daniel had moved across the country, changed his name, and was living under some "I'm a better man now" illusion. Apparently, he even had a kid. A little girl from a one-night stand. He was co-parenting with the mom, who didn't even know what he'd done. When my sister showed me pictures of the baby, my heart sank. She didn't choose him. She didn't know. But now her whole future was tied to a man like that. And I knew we couldn't let that little girl grow up thinking he was someone to look up to. So that became the final push. We gathered the last pieces of evidence, prepared our statements, and waited for the green light from the lawyer. It came on a Tuesday. 2 days later, Daniel was back in town, staying at my parents' house, of all places. Like nothing ever happened. That Friday morning, the police knocked on their door. He ran. Like a coward. Tried to fight the officers, too. They tased him right there in the front yard. My sister said the neighbors came out to watch. No one helped him. No one defended him. He was arrested and booked on the spot. 8 charges. Assault. Harassment, attempted sexual assault, obstruction, resisting arrest. The list went on. That night I didn't sleep. Neither did Mila. She sat at the window for a long time, just watching the dark. Then she looked at me and said, "Do you think we'll finally be able to breathe now?" I didn't know, but I hoped so. The trial was long, brutal, in every sense. Two of the women broke down crying during their testimonies. Mila kept it together until we got home. Then she crumbled in my arms, and I crumbled right along with her. But we got through it. When my parents took the stand, they looked empty, not sad, not guilty, just hollow, like they still couldn't believe this was real, like they were waiting for someone to say it was all just a misunderstanding. But it wasn't. It was real. All of it. The jury took less than a day to decide. Guilty. On every count. Daniel's not getting out. Ever. He'll spend the rest of his life in a prison cell. And honestly, that's still more freedom than he gave any of his victims. After the verdict, my mom tried calling me. I didn't pick up. She left a message saying she didn't know how things got this far, that we could still be a family. That forgiveness is a sign of strength. I deleted the message, and I said it out loud just for me to hear. I don't forgive you. I didn't say it with hate. I wasn't shaking or angry. It was just truth, quiet and clear. I'm not going back. Not to that house. Not to that version of family that turns its back on survivors and protects monsters. That's not home anymore. Home is here now. With Mila. We're getting married next fall. Small ceremony. Just the people who stood by us. People who believe us, who see us. My sister's going to be the maid of honor. Mila's walking down the aisle with strength in her steps and fire in her eyes. I still have nightmares sometimes, but I don't wake up alone anymore. Neither does she. And that little girl, Daniel's daughter, once her mother saw the evidence, she cut all contact with him, moved out, changed numbers, filed for full custody. She thanked us, said we saved her from years of pain. Maybe we did. I hope so. This story doesn't have a perfect ending. It's not tied up with a bow. There's no clean resolution when it comes to trauma. But we're healing, day by day. Mila laughs more now. She goes out with friends. She's alive in a way she wasn't for years. And me? I've stopped feeling guilty. I know I did what needed to be done. I stood by the woman I love. I chose her over the version of family that wanted me to stay silent. And for anyone out there still questioning if they should speak up, if they should take that risk, if anyone will believe them, let me say this clearly. We believe you. You're not alone. And you don't owe anyone your silence. Thanks for reading. Thanks for listening. This chapter of our life is closed, but the story of our healing is still being written every day.